Welcome to the New Monks. This podcast is dedicated to those of us on the journey of evolution. Through these episodes, we will dive into the lives of individual people and discover what they have learnt and how they have handled their growth. We believe that we all have wisdom to be shared with each other and can learn from listening to each other's stories. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you feel like leaving us a review and sharing the love, that would be greatly appreciated. So this is just a heads up because, there's a lot of information that is coming to light at the moment, and through these episodes, each person is going to share a different side of that for them. Now, this isn't to say that every single thing that is shared here is going to be 100% accurate. It's just not where we are right now. It's just not the case of the unraveling and the disclosures that are being revealed to us. Obviously, things are always changing, and in one moment something can be so real and so true, and the next moment is completely shifted and changed into something else. This is the journey of evolution. This is the journey of ascension that we are going through right now. So this is just an invitation that your discernment is really, really important. As always, as usual, please take what resonates and leave the rest. Thank you. Hi, welcome back to the New Monks podcast. I am Jay Muller, and this is a podcast series I created speaking to people who are going through their spiritual awakenings back at the end of 2017. Obviously, this period of time has been major, and many more people have been embarking on this journey. Today I'm speaking to Poppy, who explicitly describes the process in this way as an awakening. And this is such a cool story because she basically came into the disillusionment of Western medicine because she has been a nurse for the past 10 years, I think it was, 8 years at the time of 2020. And she was living in Jamaica, or one of the islands there at the time. And this country had a 90% rate of people who got the injection. She was there with her grandmother at the time, who she basically was there with her at the last days of her life. And I think the whole Western medicine became really demystified through that process with her grandmother, seeing how she wasn't supported enough because the tools were not provided. And through that started to ask herself many, many questions and reveal the layers and layers of what's really going on. Now she goes by the name of Mindful Nurse, and she started her own practice, basically, where she is treating people privately. And she then started to learn about Reiki and the energy body, going back to nature. And her message now is clear. It's the message of self-healing, learning how to heal yourself and having a more holistic approach, which means basically considering so many other aspects of who we are as humans, and not just diet, but many other things, our purpose, our soul, our environment, so many different things and so many different aspects to health and healing, and the difference between, what we are taught about what is a healthy life and what truly the word healing actually means. And her journey, she describes it very personally, how she went through, many revelations, and as she describes the dark night of the soul, which I'm sure you might have heard about already. We speak about her relationship to alcohol, which has been a long-standing one, and she had to really cut that out after her grandmother died, and it opened everything so much up for her. And I know so many people struggle with alcohol, and this is a very first-hand experience of that. So enjoy the episode, pull up a pew, grab a tea, and enjoy. Thank you. Hi, so welcome to the New Monks podcast. Today I'm speaking to Poppy, the mindful nurse on Instagram. And I'm really intrigued to hear about your journey as a nurse and just, coming through to the alternative kind of side of things and how that all happened. So welcome. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. Excited to have this conversation.
So yeah, if you can just take a few deep breaths before we begin.
Mhm.
And then just, how are you feeling right now?
I feel great. Thank you for that. I always enjoy doing a little bit of breath work before anything like this. So thank you. How am I feeling? I feel really amazing this week. I am on 21 days of self healing, which is a Reiki practice. So vibes are pretty high, feeling very grateful and excited to share a bit of my journey with your listeners.
It's amazing. What is the 21 days of self healing Reiki, you said?
Yeah, so I don't know if you're aware of Reiki, but I'm a Reiki master teacher. So I've just had my first two Reiki students this weekend. And when you go through three different levels, so there's Reiki 1, Reiki 2, and then you go up to Reiki master teacher level. And when you do each level, you have to go through a 21 days of self healing. So it's where you give yourself Reiki every day for 21 days. And the idea behind this is that we're clearing our own energy so that we can become a clear channel, so we can then become we can give healing energy to others. So I'm doing it alongside my students just because it's a nice thing to do and it's a nice thing to revisit, and it just helps you to stay sort of aligned and balanced. So I'm on day 5 today, and yeah, just feeling really, really good.
So is it something that you do for yourself, or is it mainly just the students do it?
It's something that you do for yourself. So the 21 days of self-healing is always something that you do for yourself, and you do it when you go through each level. So I don't have to do the 21 days of healing, but it's been something that I've returned to when I'm kind of having a bit of a wobble, or I need to sort of have a bit of a boost. I come back to my 21 days of self-healing. And because I've just had my first two Reiki students, I thought it'd be really nice to just do it alongside them.
Okay, that's really cool. So how did you find? I did Reiki, I think level 1 and 2.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, how did you find it? Where did you train? All of that.
Yeah, sure. So it kind of all goes back to my healing journey, really. So I guess I should probably introduce myself to your listeners. So my name's Poppy, and I'm here today. I think Jess found me via my Instagram page as Mindful Nurse. So this year I've been a qualified nurse for 10 years. I was living overseas in the Caribbean when in 2021 I went through a series of emotional traumas, and I started on my own healing journey. So I'd just been through a huge bereavement. I got fired from my nursing position overseas over COVID politics. And my life got quite literally turned upside down overnight. So I went from living this dream life in the Caribbean to being back home in the UK, living at home with my dad at 29 years old, unemployed, unvaccinated, with an uncertain future in my nursing profession. So I went through a great deal, and I had to start this healing journey. And people kept saying to me, you need to heal, you need to heal. And I had no idea what that even meant. What does it even mean to heal? So I kind of set out on this journey, this kind of healing pilgrimage, to find out what exactly that meant. And well, let's say I opened Pandora's box. To start with, I felt like I needed emotional healing from the bereavement that I'd been through, but I didn't realize that when you start this healing journey, it's like this journey of self-discovery, and you're going to end up peeling back all of the layers to discover who you are. So part of that journey for me was Reiki. So I had my first Reiki session when I was overseas with a close friend, and I just absolutely fell in love with the practice. And as a nurse who's been in the conventional medicine, I didn't really have an understanding of the energetic body or, spiritual health. So I started finding holistic practices through my own healing journey, and I got so much from Reiki, so much peace at a time when I was really suffering. So I just started going for Reiki sessions. And then I came back to this country and I found my now Reiki master, who's also a registered nurse. And after a session with her, I said, I'd love to be able to do this, but I'm not intuitive. And she said, anyone can do Reiki. All you need to have is the intention to want to help others. And she said, you're already a nurse, so you're already halfway there. And so I went home and I thought, actually, I'd love to do it. So then I started on my Reiki journey. That was 2 years ago. But I've been on a huge, a huge healing journey. And after losing my job, I came back to this country and my future was so uncertain within the nursing profession. And after everything I'd been through, I really felt like I just wanted to set up something, my own business that helped people in a different way on a more holistic level. So that's why I set up Mindfulness, which is a holistic nursing service. I work one-to-one with clients privately paying who have chronic disease or mental health issues, and we're looking at the whole picture. So rather than just symptom management, which is what we do in Western medicine, we look at physical health, we look at mental health, and we look at spiritual health, and we look at that as a whole, how they're all interconnected. And the work that I'm doing is just absolutely life-changing. I'm so passionate about it. So thank you for having me on.
Wow, so interesting. Yeah, I would love to unpack some of what you said at this beginning. So big transformation.
Yeah.
What were you doing in Jamaica? So you were in Jamaica before 2020, right?
Yeah, so I was actually in the Cayman Islands, which is a British overseas territory. I moved over in 2019, and I actually moved out there to be closer to my grandmother who lived out there. I was working as a
Okay.
practice nurse. I was there throughout all of lockdown, all of COVID. It was a crazy, crazy time because we're 65,000 people on a small island. And yeah, so I was there throughout lockdown.
So you went there to be close to your grandmother and you were working full time as a nurse at the time.
Yes.
And before that you were in the UK.
Before that, I was in the UK.
And then you said you lost your job. So I would love to hear about how that period of time was for you over there. Because I feel like it sounds like a lot of the transformation happened there during that time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, completely life changing. So, just to give a bit of background on how things were before that, I mean, I've had a very, very good life. Throughout my 20s, though, I was very, very lost. I wouldn't know this until I go through my journey, but I had issues with alcoholism and I used to travel the world. I've done so much backpacking, but I was always seeking something. I was always seeking something outside of myself. I was traveling around the world, having all these crazy experiences, is looking for something, but not quite sure what that was. And I didn't realize until the healing journey, but I'd been using alcohol to suppress emotions from trauma from my childhood, and also because I lacked confidence within myself. So a lot of social anxiety. So I went through the first issue was the first trauma was losing my grandmother. So my grandmother was a hugely important female figure in my life, and she got diagnosed with cancer during 2020. And I nursed her through that. So we had 6 months from her diagnosis to the day she passed. And for the first time, I was on the receiving end of conventional medicine as a family member. And she went through really intensive chemo treatment. And it was just an awful, awful thing to witness. So after she died, I just kind of plundered into this deep emotional suffering. It really knocked me off my feet. And for the first time in my life, I was kind of forced. I'm stuck on this island, so I can't escape to another country like I would have normally done. Um, I'm really isolating myself from people because I'm going through like this pain, this grief. And for the first time in my life, I was kind of forced to sit with all of my emotions, and it was so overwhelming. So during that period, I went through a huge spiritual awakening. And I don't know if you believe in astrology, but I was actually going through my Saturn returns, so it kind of all comes together. But at the time, it felt like one thing after the other. Like I remember thinking, is the universe punishing me? I've just been through this huge bereavement, and then 6 months later, I'm just getting back on my feet and I get fired from my job. So, with regards to the job you asked, I was in a small clinic of 15 people, and 14 out of 15 got the vaccinations. It was a really hard time for me because there was so much pressure for me to get it. But I'd done my own research, and I came to the simple conclusion that, as someone who's young, fit, and healthy, my risk of COVID was quite low and getting sick, but the risk of me taking the vaccine and having an adverse reaction was higher. So it was a risk benefit analysis. It was quite simple for me. But that didn't go down too well. There was a high vaccination rate on the island. I think about 90% of the island got vaccinated. So there was a real hostility towards people who were not vaccinated. So it was a really, really hard time. And during that time, I was just in an acute stress response. I was on eggshells all the time. I was actually self-medicating because I was so anxious going into my job. I felt like every time I went in, like they were talking about, like I was getting so paranoid about this stupid vaccine. And I was a huge part of that team there. They were my family away from home. And yeah, I just went into work on a Wednesday lunchtime, and my manager just called me in, and she just basically just said, I can't keep you here anymore. So she was firing me. It was really, really hard. But I'm so grateful for that experience, because if that hadn't have happened, I wouldn't be here talking to you today as mindfulness. I went through a great deal of emotional suffering as a result of that, because when you're generally fired from a position, it's because you've done something wrong. I hadn't done anything wrong. I just didn't want to have a medication. And that was really, really hard. It was really hard for me to understand, why is this happening to me? People were saying things behind my back, such as I didn't deserve to be a nurse, that I didn't care about my patients. And actually, that's the complete opposite. I care about my patients so much, and I care about the nursing profession. And medical ethics is a huge part of what's been ingrained into me as a nurse. And what I was witnessing was going against everything I've ever been taught with regards to medical ethics. So I'm looking at it thinking, why is no one else seeing this from my perspective? So it was a really, really lonely time, and a really confusing time as well. So I lost my job. 2 weeks later, I lost my work permit. I got kicked off the island. My partner came with me as well. And yeah, so I returned back to this country. I've been in the Caribbean for 3 years. Mid-December, freezing cold, just like total reality check, what's just happened.
Wow. I can't believe it. Yeah, wow. It feels like so much happened in a very short amount of time. Um, yeah, obviously, sorry to hear about your grandmother. So, is that why you went over there, or
Yeah,
not at
yeah,
all? Yeah.
yeah, I went over there.
And so, what? Just starting there, what? You said you were for the first time at the hands of like Western medicine. What did you
Mm,
experience during that time? Was that Did that make you see some things very clearly?
yeah, absolutely. Yes, I did. It was really interesting being on the receiving end as a family member to Western medicine, and I just really feel like my grandmother's needs hadn't been met on a holistic level. So my grandmother, going into the end stages of the last days of her life, she was in spiritual distress. She went through something which is called terminal restlessness, which is where the mind can't cope with the physiological changes that are happening in the body. So she was dying of cancer. Her body was actively shutting down, but mentally she was still there. And she couldn't cope with what was going on. So she went into this depression. And to witness that was really, really hard. Hospice did get involved right at the end, and they were absolute godsend. But I just felt like the level of care that she was given was so poor, and I really feel like her holistic needs hadn't been met. So, a lot of the reason why, there's so many layers to why I've decided to do mindfulness. But my grandmother was a massive member of the community in the Cayman Islands, and when she died, she shook the whole community. They had a minute's silence for her in Parliament. Like, people were grieving on a mass level because she dedicated her whole life to humanitarian work and volunteering. So after she died, I started to kind of feel this real responsibility that she's left me in her legacy. And I started to look at my life and, how was I living my life? And I started to ask myself these really deep philosophical questions like, how do I want to be remembered when I'm gone? What impact do I want to leave on the world when I die? Because this woman who meant so much to me had left such an imprint on this world. So I started looking at my life, and I was getting drunk every weekend. I was binge drinking 2 or 3 times a week, having the best time ever, but on like a really like hedonistic pathway, really like pleasure seeking. So yeah, huge kind of things happening for me in terms of self-discovery and self-understanding. And my spiritual awakening, I mean, there's so many layers to it because I started to wake up on a personal level. So I started to self reflect, I started to meditate, and I started to go inwardly, and I started to understand that I had developed these really unhealthy behavioral patterns into adulthood as a result of things that had happened in my childhood, which I had no idea. I mean, with regards to the drinking, I thought that I just loved getting drunk. Like I loved alcohol, and I was this real party animal. And I just thought I loved getting drunk, but I didn't realize that actually I was using alcohol as a form of escapism to become someone else because I was so uncomfortable in my own body. So I was having really big realizations.
Yeah.
And then I started to wake up to society and, the healthcare system that I'd been working in and the way, the government's run and things like that. So really opening my eyes up to different things. And then also on a very spiritual level, when my grandmother died, I wanted to know where she'd gone. And I've been nursing for at this point 8 years, and I've held hands of people as they've taken their last breaths. And we're very traditional in nursing. We kind of open the window to let the soul out, but I'd never really given it much more thought than that. I remember always thinking like, oh, I can't comprehend that conversation. It's too much for my brain to comprehend. So when my grandmother died, I was so desperate to understand where she had gone and if she was okay. So I started actively looking for signs from her. For about 3 or 4 months after she passed, I was incessantly like searching for her. And I mean, this is very dependent on your own beliefs, but they say that sometimes when you pass over to the other side, you can't penetrate back through to this realm until a couple of months after.
Yes, I've heard that.
I think it was about 5 months after. I started having some very, very real signs coming through for me from my grandmother, like real. And it was so real for me that I was like, okay, now I know that there's life after death. And it just sent me on this crazy spiritual path. So I've been on this adventure for, over 2 years now.
Wow. So before you had the experience with your grandmother and her last days, did you, because it sounds like you had an awareness that, her body couldn't, and her mind, there was something that, was overbearing for her. And you would, I don't know, I can't remember the phrase that you called it there.
The terminal restlessness.
Yes. So how did you, because I feel like even that in itself can be like hard for people to get, you know what I mean? Did you have an awareness of this before or not really? Like, was it just through that experience that made you see?
Yeah, I mean, terminal restlessness in itself, even as a nurse, I'd never heard of it. And the hospice nurses were coming in. and they were saying, oh, your grandmother's suffering with terminal restlessness. I didn't know what that was. So that was my first time experiencing it. And it was really hard to witness because she started to shut down emotionally. She was fighting. She didn't want to go. She wasn't ready to go. So she was fighting. And, you know, there's so much. We know that the mind and body are connected. And for us to be able to pass over, I think there does need to be almost this element of peace. So my grandmother's dying process lasted for 7 days. That is an incredibly long time. She hung on in there because she didn't want to go, and eventually the nurses they gave her medication so that she kind of slipped into this kind of sedative state, and eventually she passed over, and she passed over really peacefully. But there was this real resistance.
Yeah, it sounds like so much opened up for you, just like through that experience. And then, and so when it comes to like the Western medicine's part and play within that, I think you really realize like there's something missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think more than anything, it came from my own healing journey. I mean, you know, because you've been through your own healing journey. Once you get onto this path, once you heal yourself, you want to share it with the world. You want to show other people. And I discovered holistic healing, and I discovered the work of healers who are just absolutely incredible. And healers have been around for thousands of years, and they're hiding in the background, planting their seeds for healing, and they don't get the recognition that they deserve. So I started really delving into the sort of self-care practices, and I was really going for it with meditation, sound healing, Reiki, anything that just made me feel good from the emotional suffering that I was experiencing. And I just became addicted to it. You know, someone who up until 29 years old is like binge drinking alcohol and neglecting their own body. That time was so important for me to just like nurture and love myself. And so much healing came with that. I had to do so much work. I mean, I've had a lot of counselling sessions to understand why I was having issues with alcohol. I'm now 2.5 years sober, which is amazing.
Wow.
But the stuff that was coming up and the stuff that I was realising about myself, it was just the only way I can describe it, my spiritual awakening, was like the universe grabbed me by the shoulders, shook me, and was just saying to me, like, wake up. And when I look back to that person that I was before my awakening, because you do go through this rebirthing process, I don't resonate or connect with that version of me. Like, I can't even remember what it was like to be her because I was so lost. And it's like this veil was just lifted from my eyes, and all of a sudden I could see clearly for the first time. And I believe that's what it feels like. I believe that's what it feels like to become conscious and have this awareness.
Yeah, mine was exactly the same. It was like finally I could see. It was almost like I was so numb for so long, and I didn't know that I was numb. All of a sudden, it was like, oh, wow, I can feel, I can see again. You know, like I'm alive. I'm actually alive now.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you can't describe it, can you, until you go through it?
No. Yeah, and even still, it's hard to describe because unless you've been through it, it's like very tangible, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I went through, I don't know if you've heard of the dark night of the soul, but I went through the dark night of the soul where my whole perception of reality, my whole understanding of this existence just completely collapsed. And I guess I had like an existential crisis. Like I had no idea who I was, like what my purpose was. I had this real humbling realization that my little life is so insignificant on this huge universal level. And so then I started to realize, you know, these silly little things that we worry about, you know, she said that or he said this. We're so consumed in our tiny little world and our little bubble. And actually, our lives are so insignificant. And I think that was a real humbling realization for me.
Yeah. I find it interesting what you're saying about alcohol as well, because I feel like, it's so normalized, and probably there are a lot of people who are doing the same thing and they don't realize it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, it's so normalised in our culture. And, even just like university, Freshers' Week is a week-long piss
Mm.
up organised by the university as an icebreaker for the students who are teenagers. It just seems so wrong. And, I have no judgment for anyone who drinks alcohol, because I can't judge because I was there. But I have learned so much about alcohol, and once you break free from the spell, because it is like being under a spell, this kind of, it has this hold over you. Once you break free from that and you
Mm,
start to look
yeah.
at the impact of alcohol in our society, you realize that as adults we don't know how to be without a drink in our hand. You go to any function, whether it's a wedding, whether it's a funeral, there's alcohol always involved. And alcohol's a grade 1 carcinogen. It can cause cancer in humans, and we're literally drinking liquid toxic
It's poison.
poison. It's
Literally,
poison,
I know.
and it
It's
honestly is
wild.
so crazy. But I had a real problem, and before I gave up, I started to develop a bit of a tremor, and I started to get all of these symptoms when I was not drinking, like really severe anxiety. Um, you know, really just,
Wow.
yeah, it got really quite bad, and
Wait, so
it came.
that's so interesting. Wait, so that is that what you're talking about? You were trying to not feel
Yeah, complete form of
through
escapism.
alcohol.
So you might find this very
Wow.
interesting, but I had a drunk alter ego. Her name was Patricia, and she was the person that I became when my alcohol level got to a certain point. So my eyes would glaze over. I would literally
Wow.
become a different persona. And for
Mm.
me, I would have like a blackout night. I'd be walking and talking and functioning, but I was not there. Like, I was not there. And I actually had a counselling session. We did some shadow work. I had a counselling session as Patricia to understand this version of me, this dark side of me, because she'd been with me since I was in my teens. And
Mm.
when I gave up drinking, I had this counselling session as Patricia. And she was so angry. She was so angry with me because she's like been there with me my whole life, and now all of a sudden I'm shutting her out. So I really got to
Mm.
understand this version of myself. And in truth, she was a person that I escaped to become because I was carrying so much pain in my body that it was so uncomfortable to be me. So I had
Mm.
this really healing session where I thanked her for everything she had done for me. I thanked her, but I told her that I had to like let her go. Sounds so crazy. But I made peace with
Mm.
her. And Patricia's
Mm.
been gone now for 2.5 years.
It's yeah, the alcohol thing is huge. I just feel like for me I mean, I gave up alcohol 10 years ago now. It's been a while, but I never liked it. I never enjoyed it. So
Yeah,
it wasn't difficult. But I just think more and more now these days, I just feel like it really feels like poison, you know? Like
yeah. So
even
so for you,
when you
so for you, it's yeah.
so
So
when
for
you
you,
drink
it's
it,
quite easy to give up.
yeah, I it was just like, okay, I'm done. Because I would
Yeah,
also go out at points because I love dancing. So sometimes I would go out and I wouldn't drink. I just want to enjoy the music, you know.
yeah.
So I would also do that.
It was 10 years is absolutely incredible. For me, it was a lot harder. I mean, literally, when I first gave up drinking, I was like, oh, I'm 1 day sober, I'm 3 days
Yeah,
sober. Like, I was literally counting down every day. And now, like, I know it doesn't have a hold on me anymore because I'm not like, I know I'm 2.5 years sober, roughly, but it doesn't have
yeah,
it does not have a hold on me anymore. I used to walk down the alcohol aisle and I used to get like really excited, like a kid in a sweet shop, and I was just waiting for any opportunity to have a drink. So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
big. Yeah, that's a big transformation. But it's funny because I think for me, a lot of people think like, oh, did you have a problem? You know, it's I find that interesting as well that that's always the first go to because it's so normalized. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's very strange that you don't, like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's quite funny.
absolutely. I think lots of people are waking up now, though, to realise that alcohol is really,
Mm,
it's not good. So I think lots of people are going sober. I mean, the sober industry, the 0% alcohols, that's
yes,
predicted to be worth like 10 trillion or something by 2025. And when I
interesting.
first went sober 2.5 years ago, you could get like a 0% Heineken beer. Now you can get 0% gin, you can get 0% Prosecco, like you
Yes,
can get so much. And
yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, some people probably are thinking, why do you want to drink a 0% alcohol
I
if
know,
you don't drink
literally.
alcohol? But for me, if I go out socially, like I do like to have a glass in my hand, and I feel kind of special having like a 0% gin and
Mm.
tonic. So it's
Yeah, I think
it's
also,
whatever works for you.
yeah, and it's probably also one of those things when people are transitioning, especially if it's like hard for them, it can be that bridge, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Sometimes I like to have a kombucha in a champagne glass.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, absolutely. It's just the
So
act of
funny.
having a drink, isn't it? Having that in your hand. I think that's what's nice.
Mm.
But I
And it
mean,
feels like a celebration as well,
yeah,
somehow.
but with the going sober, this is obviously all happening as I'm going through this trauma and whatnot. The spiritual
Yes,
awakening is coming in really, really hard because as you know, alcohol is a toxin and it keeps us stuck on a low vibration. So we're constantly stuck in a cycle of anxiety and depression when we're drinking that much alcohol. And alcohol is very, very spiritually suppressing. So up until this
yes,
point, I haven't
yes,
connected to my spirituality at all because I'm constantly binge
yes.
drinking. So when I went
Yeah,
sober, the spiritual awakening's coming in hard. Like I'm
hard.
really
Yeah.
after about 10 days of going sober, you start to, again, the brain fog goes, you start to think clearly. Before I gave up drinking, I could barely string a sentence together. Like I must have killed so many brain cells. I could barely
Mm.
talk. And, within 2.5 years, I finished my master's degree and I've done all this studying. And I feel like my level of intelligence has like come back, or it's
Mm.
certainly improved since I've given up drinking.
So how long were you drinking? Like, was it from a very young age, or is it just like it would go through phases?
Yeah, no, from a really young age. So, God, from a young teenager, I, from a young teenager, I quickly discovered that if I drank a lot, I could suppress my emotions, and that just became a tool for me. I'd learned from such a
Yeah,
young age to suppress my emotions. As I
yeah,
went
the
into my
coping
teens and
mechanism.
my teens and my 20s, I started to develop quite bad social anxiety, and I felt like alcohol made me feel more confident, which is a lie for anybody who suffers with social anxiety, because it's really common. A lot of us get into social situations and we have a drink to relax. But the most empowering thing and the best thing you can do for your own self-confidence is remove that crutch and discover your own confidence. So for me, like these little milestones when I went sober, like going to my first wedding sober, like those were really big deals for
Mm.
me. And I would go and I would leave and I would have a really good time and I would feel so like empowered, like, oh my God, I've just done my
Yeah,
first sober wedding and I had a great
yeah.
time. It's so
It's fun, and
empowering.
you can
And
be yourself.
yeah,
What I like what you said, and I totally agree with you that it's not true that it gives you confidence. Why do you feel that?
it's
Like a lot of people think that.
yeah, absolutely. It's a crutch. It's a crutch. So if you think that it's giving you confidence, then you're under the belief that without it you don't have any confidence. So that's a storyline that you're telling yourself. I'm not confident. These are the things I used to tell myself. I'm not confident. I'm
Mm.
going to look stupid. It's that inner voice that we need to connect with. So like when we use alcohol, and it becomes a crutch for a lot of things. People think they need a drink to relax. People think they need a drink to be confident. If you're using it for that way, then it's not a natural thing. It's a toxin that you're putting into your body. And just through my own experience, removing that crutch and having to put myself into a situation that scares me, putting myself out of my comfort zone. and doing it, that's what builds real confidence.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. And it's long term.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you stopped drinking, and then so why did that decision come? Because I think you mentioned that, oh yeah, after your grandmother passed, this happened to me as well when my grandparents passed. It was a very visceral feeling of like, oh, now they're the ancestors. This is the lineage. Like now I'm,
Yeah.
what is my heritage? What is my story? What is, I had the
Yeah.
same experience, and it was very like, I don't know, it was just like all around me. I really felt it, and I felt that what I learned, it was like I just received this package of everything that I got through them, and so you started questioning basically at that point, like what am I here for? I guess is one, you know.
Yeah, I started questioning everything. What's my purpose? How do I want to be remembered when I'm gone? What impact do I want to leave on this life? And I knew that the alcohol was a real issue. I actually didn't know I had a problem with drinking until I was 28, sorry. So I
Mm-hmm.
broke 2 bones in 3 weeks from drunken related injuries. And I'd broken my wrist and it was in a cast. And I'd made a decision that while it was healing, I would give up drinking to give the bone the best chance to heal. And upon making that decision, I started crying. And I was like, why are you crying? And I wasn't crying because I'd broken my wrist. I was crying because I didn't know how long it was going to take to heal and when I'd next be able to have an alcoholic drink. So in that moment, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't think you have a normal relationship with alcohol. And up until this point, 28, I'm getting blackout drunk most weekends. And I just thought that was normal. So that was the penny drop then. So I had my first 60 days sober. I stuck to what I said while the bone healed, and the cast came off, and I was like, oh, I'm aware now that I have a bit of a problem, but I'm going to go back in moderation. And I quickly slipped back into binge drinking. That went on for a whole year, like stopping, starting, trying to go sober, failing. And what came with that was so much shame because I couldn't do it. And the only way I knew how to deal with those emotions was to drink more alcohol. So I was in this perpetual cycle. And it actually got worse. My drinking got so much worse before it got better. And because I'd been using it as a crutch for all those years to suppress my emotions, when my grandmother died, naturally I started drinking more. And, I'm having all these profound realizations, but I don't know what to do with them. So I'm just drinking more. So even though I was starting to have the awakening was kind of stunted because I was still drinking. I wasn't able to fully kind of go through it until I completely stopped. So, what I did on my 29th birthday, I wrote a card to my 30-year-old self, and I've poured my heart out into this card, and I've said, I'm so sorry that you've had to go through all this pain and suffering. I'm so proud of you. You've got a problem with drinking, and you know that you need to stop. I've written all this stuff in this card. And I didn't realize at the time, but that was a really powerful form of manifestation. So I'm like imprinting that onto my subconscious mind. We're going to do this. And I keep referring to us as we. It's like I've got a split personality. But in the note, in this letter, I'm so loving to myself. I'm telling myself, I'm really proud of you and I believe in you. So I wrote this card to myself and I date it for my 30th birthday. And I decide that for my 30th birthday, I'm going to make some big changes. And the biggest change I can make that I've got complete control over is removing the alcohol from my life. So I opened the card on my 30th birthday. And at this point, I'm 8 months sober. And my life in that 8 months period was just going like this. I started working towards setting up my own business. I finished my master's degree. Things were just going really, really well. So I opened the card on my 30th birthday, and it was just the biggest gift that I could have given to myself.
Wow, I love that. So this was after you had turned 29. You wrote that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. I love it how it's like just intuitively guided, that you just, I feel like I've had moments like that as well. You just do these things and then later you learn it's like a technique that people are teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And my whole business has been so intuitively guided. when I came back to this country, all I knew was that I really, really wanted to set up something that aligned with my values and my beliefs. I didn't think that I could pursue a career in a system that doesn't treat the entirety of the person. So I had this real vision that I wanted to set up something that was holistic. And a lot of nurses go down a holistic healing route, but they kind of leave nursing to do holistic healing full
Yeah, they do.
time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time with my nurse. I love being a nurse, it's amazing. And, someone needs to bridge the two together, bridge the world of
Yes.
holistic healing and conventional nursing. And actually, on this journey, I've been learning so much because as nurses, we were always meant to treat the patient holistically. We've lost that approach to care with modern day medicine. So my purpose started off as, I'm trying to teach people about holistic health, but along the way, I've actually started I'm trying to revive an old way of practicing. I've got so many nurses and healthcare professionals looking who want to understand, what is this holistic approach? Because we talk about holistic care in university, they throw it around like a buzzword, but actually, just spiritual health alone we do not understand in conventional medicine. So in the hospital, we have tick boxes when we do assessments for patients. And there's a box that says, have you met the spiritual needs of the patient? And that literally means, have you asked them if they're religious? So
Wow.
there's a real kind of misunderstanding.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do it very well in end of life and hospice care. They are doing a holistic approach. They really acknowledge the spirit and the spiritual health. But my question is, why are we waiting till someone's faced with a terminal illness to start exploring spiritual health and the spirit and the soul?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, it
obviously
doesn't make sense.
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And obviously I do Reiki and I work with energy. So going back into the hospital with all of those skills, I'm starting to see these patients on a real spiritual level. I'm understanding this is a spirit, and I'm reading the energy of people, and there's so much to be said for
I
spiritual
mean,
health.
yeah. I think it's amazing. I think exactly what you said. We just have to do it. Like when we know and we have that intuition, we just have to carve the path. Because obviously, the thing is, some people don't even know. They haven't had the experience. They don't know that the spirit and the soul is even a thing.
Yeah,
So to them it might be very strange. Like, what is this? And that's the whole premise of Western medicine. It kind of avoids that very important part.
yeah, oh,
So
absolutely. But
yeah, it's
I had
amazing.
the pleasure of going to a plant medicine retreat in March, and I was given a very clear health message, which I've been trying to work out how to share with, my community. And that is that we are spirits having a human experience, and for us to be in a total state of health, we need to allow that energy to flow freely throughout our body. And when we
Yeah.
go through life, especially in the Western world, there's all of these distractions. Social media is a huge one, binge watching TV, our diet,
Yes.
all of these things are suppressing our souls, and
Yes.
it's
Yes.
making us sick.
Yep.
So
Yep.
for, so so
Yep.
for us to start freeing our souls, to start reconnecting, because we're so disconnected from our minds and our bodies, we need to start going backwards and doing ancient
Yes.
practices, yoga, meditation, breath work, going outside in nature. We're not designed to be stuck in houses, sedentary, not going outside. We need to be outside, connected with our bare feet on the earth. So, I've got a real understanding of the energetic
Yeah.
body and how that's making people sick.
I love it. I think it's amazing. I feel like this is exactly what's needed because obviously you have the what you have everything you got taught, but at the same time it's like remembering who we are and all this stuff that's been really purposefully hidden from us. So it's
Oh
like
yeah.
we have to bring it in. There's no other way it's going to come. So I think it's amazing what you're doing, to be honest, and especially because it's going to make people feel safe because you're also a nurse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I feel really privileged. I am in a really privileged position, but because I'm so passionate about it, because I have been through my own
Mm,
healing journey, and
mm,
because I was so, I was so unconscious before, I've been through this huge
mm-hmm.
transformation. And that's what the universe wanted from me. They wanted me to go
Yep.
through all of that trauma. They wanted me to
Yeah.
discover the healing journey. And they've put me on this path. They've led me here. My whole business has come about because of manifestation. I'm meditating, putting it out into the universe. How can I set up a business? I've got no idea. I've just got a nursing background. And I'm being given information. I got given my name for my business. I got given the color. I got given the logo. That
Yep.
has all come to me through meditation. And
I,
so like 8 months before I even set up my business, I'd already been given the logo, the name, and the color. So I ordered these scrubs from America, and they arrived, and I would just walk around the house and I would just say, "Hi, I'm Poppy from Mindfulness." I would start having fake podcast interviews with myself, talking about my
love that.
journey. Yeah, honestly,
I
talking
love
about my journey. And and it just all fell into place for me. It just feels
Mm,
so divinely guided. It feels like this is really the path that I'm meant to be on. And yeah, I'm just
love that.
so grateful.
That's amazing. I think, yeah, I had a similar thing with this podcast and platform that I started. It all came through meditation. The logo, the name, everything. Same thing.
Amazing.
I love it.
And I love what you're doing, because I really think that we can learn from other people's experiences.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
since COVID-19 particularly, I feel like there's been a real loss of community. We've lost so much community.
Mm,
People are so isolated more than ever. Mental health has just
it's so
gone.
true.
And
Yeah,
we need to find that again. We need to understand that there are good people out there. You
yeah,
know, and what you're
yeah.
doing is you are creating community with your podcast.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest calls that I feel like many people are feeling at the moment, community. And especially for those of us who chose not to get the, you know what, even more as
Yes.
well, it's like community.
Yeah.
And actually, because, yeah, for some people it might have been very isolating during that time, like you said, where you were 90% of the population. That's wild. I wanted to ask you actually why and how were you so like adamant on it? Because it takes a lot.
Yeah. I So, just really simply, when there was talk about them rolling out a vaccine, as a registered nurse, as a practitioner, I knew that I needed to understand what was in the vaccine, for myself and for my patients as well. And I was following a lot of obs and gynae doctors on Instagram, and so, to begin with, I was classed as vaccine hesitant. I was able to buy a bit of time because there was no COVID on the island. We'd completely locked down. There was
Yeah.
no COVID. So I was able to buy about 6 months of time where I just said, I'm going to put it off. And during that time, I was able to do some research. So people started getting their first shots. And we had an overwhelmingly alarming amount of women, young women, coming into the clinic who were having horrendous menstrual periods. They were passing clots
Wow.
that looked like aliens, like the size of their hand. We had women in their
Wow.
70s and 80s who were having bleeding. They're postmenopausal. They haven't had a period for 20, 30 years. They're bleeding. And I was following these doctors online, and they were sharing very similar scenarios, and they got completely taken off of social media. And I was like, that's really strange. Why are they being silenced with this?
Okay, so you
Really,
saw.
really.
So they were
Yeah.
saying it came from the, yeah.
Yeah, so there was a theory, because it was starting to happen after these women were going for their vaccines. So I took a real interest in that, because I'm a young woman of childbearing age, and it's really important. If these vaccines are impacting women's menstrual cycles, that absolutely deserves some recognition. And like, it just got completely brushed under the carpet. But as the months went on, I started seeing more and more women come into the clinic that were reporting these symptoms, and it scared me, to be completely honest. So I continued doing my research, and I just came to the conclusion that the risk outweighed the benefit. It's so simple. But I got penalised. I got penalised for that, and it's been really hard. It was very, very isolating. When I moved back to this country, I actually attended a march up in London. It was against the NHS mandates because they were proposing to mandate it for all NHS workers, which completely goes against medical ethics, like entirely.
Yeah, I
And I went
know, right?
it's insane. I went to this march up in London, and there was thousands and thousands of healthcare workers, and they were all wearing their uniform. And on the back, they would write like 27 years of service in the NHS, whatever it was. And like for the first time, I was like, oh my god, I'm not alone. Like there's more people out there that feel the same way as me. And we marched to Leicester Square, and we laid down our uniforms in solidarity, like in silent, peaceful protest. And it was just incredible to be with that many people who felt the same. So I knew I wasn't alone. But it's been a really difficult journey, and even now it's still not easy. It's still hard to see the repercussions of what's happening, and
I know, fudge, man. It's wild. And honestly, after hearing about it, already, and then when it plays out, it's just like, what? Do you know what I mean? It's like a double. It's very bizarre,
yeah,
to watch it happen.
yeah, very, very strange.
Mm. So basically, for you, you were seeing the results firsthand at the time. So that
Yeah,
was like a big confirmation.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
the biggest, like, I mean, you can speculate that it could be this or this or this, but like the postmenopausal women that were in their 70s and 80s that were bleeding, like that's not right.
Yeah.
But I got in trouble because I even ran on Instagram, you can do like a poll. I asked my followers on my personal account, has anybody had any issues with their period since they've had the vaccine? And I think like 70% of my followers said yes. I was like, if you speak to women about it who've had it, I'm sure they will tell you. I've spoken to lots of women, but there was no, like, there's still no one's not talking about it. It's just so bizarre.
Mm.
And those doctors
Wait,
that
how
were
many people did
sharing
you say?
those doctors that were sharing the images, they're just getting completely taken off of social media, completely shadow banned, removed.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. So you were like right there seeing all of all of that happening.
Yeah,
And I think it becomes very obvious when you see it that it's just
yeah,
like, what?
yeah, yeah. It just didn't make any sense to me as a practitioner who abides by their code of conduct. It just didn't make any sense to me.
Mm. And so how did you deal with that? Because I feel like that is a really big part of this awakening. It's just like, I
Yeah,
don't know, like recognizing that things are not really as they seem, and like this really horrible thing is happening, and it's like out of our hands, and
yeah.
people are falling for it.
It's been really
Yeah.
hard. I was so upset and angry and heartbroken and like just so confused, all of these emotions. And I continued to research for months and months and months, all the while trying to decipher, what's in this, is it safe? And it got to a point where I had to stop because it was really impacting my mental health. Everything that I was doing was lowering my vibration. It was really impacting me. And so I had to kind of I had to just stop. I've had to find peace and acceptance with the whole situation, and I've had counselling on being fired from my position, and I'm very, very grateful that I did. So I've been able to completely heal that. But yeah, it was traumatizing. That's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah, it is for sure. I think I've heard a lot of people speaking on that, like the trauma from these past 4 years, and I think it's happening in a way people don't even recognize it. But it's yeah, I think sometimes as well when you see the information, you can stay in that I don't know, fearful kind of space. So it's important to like, okay, take yourself out of it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think meditation was a complete lifesaver for me during that period. It just gave me chance to step away from those crazy thoughts. And for me, giving up all of the bad things, the alcohol and meditation became my new form of escapism. And it's been so profound for me. I've learned so much from meditation, and it gave me so much peace during a time when I was really, really struggling. And actually, the meditation gave me peace, and that was what I was looking for. But I started to have so much more from the meditation, so many more profound realizations, realizing that I hadn't been living in the present moment, that I hadn't been breathing properly. So, if any of your listeners, are going through a difficult time, meditation would be the first place I'd recommend you to go to, because it's completely
Oh, mate.
accessible and it's free. It's completely free and it's accessible to all of us.
This is what I always say, literally, it's so important. And it's interesting you said it's like it became your new form of escape, but it's not escaping because to be able to sit with yourself is
Yeah,
confrontation anyway,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But it's so important. I feel like it's something that I feel like there are people who would say like I can't do it or I wouldn't be able to do like a course, where I have to do it for hours and I
Yeah,
feel like that says a lot. And if you feel like that, that's more reason why you should, you know.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest barriers to people trying meditation. They think that they've tried it once and they can't empty their mind, but it's not really about that, is there? I
Yes,
think
that's not the point. Yeah.
there's a big misconception that it's about just sitting for hours in the cross-legged
Yes.
position and that we've got to empty our mind, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
about that at all.
Yeah.
And I use guided meditations in my one-to-one sessions with my clients, and they are so, so powerful. And I feel like if anyone's listening and they want to try meditation, you can always do a guided meditation on YouTube. That's where I first started out because I had no idea how to start, and that was a real introduction and a real way in to have that someone kind of guiding me through.
Mm. Yeah, I just think it's huge, and because you just see so much about yourself just through that practice, and that's where you can then begin to bring awareness and start to make changes
Oh
and all
yeah,
that
and I
good stuff.
think I think coming into the present moment has probably been the biggest for me, the biggest lesson from meditation, because I was so caught in the past. I was constantly running away to the future, so I was always planning my next journey, my next adventure, my next trip. And the realization that you've not been living in the present moment for 29 years, like that is wild. And when you start to live in the present moment, you start to see the beauty in this world.
Mm.
Like you start to notice the little butterflies, like all the little things that you wouldn't otherwise realize because you're so up in your head. You start to have a real appreciation and understanding for this life.
So true. So true. I love that what you said, the little things, the appreciation, because it's like just a different perspective, and it's that will affect how you experience the world, how you experience your life. You can
Yeah.
be in awe and in appreciation, or like you say, worrying about something, and you
Yeah,
know.
and I think gratitude practice as well. I mean, gratitude has been such a good tool for me. So when my grandmother died, I was really suffering because I was viewing the whole situation from a form of victimhood. You know, I went through about 6 months of, oh, this was awful. What an awful experience. Why did I have to go through that? I was on my own. It was really like viewing it from this place of victimhood. And once I kind of reframed my thoughts and I reframed the situation to this place of gratitude, the healing for me really began. And I started to look at the situation, what a privilege that it was for me to be there with my grandmother at that really vulnerable time. How amazing was it that I got to spend so much time with her before she passed away? I started to really look at it from a different perspective. And then I started to realize if we change the way we think, we change our entire experience. And we can do that for anything in life. We can go back to something that we've been through in the past and we can try and look at it from a different perspective. And it changes the way we feel. Therefore, we have complete control over our own reality.
Yeah, exactly. The victimhood thing is massive. It's huge, and again, it's just a change of perspective in life. It's like, what are you choosing? How are you choosing to view? What lens are you having? Because either it's going to bring more of that negative kind of emotions, or you're going to be grateful. You know.
Yeah.
It's I love that you found these things that kind of would help you and support you along the way. Yeah, so you also mentioned that you had a boyfriend. I don't know if that, so he was there with you at the time as well. Is that what you
Yes,
said?
we were able to came in together, yeah.
Yeah, and so was he experiencing a similar thing or not so much?
No, no, he didn't suffer as much as I did. I mean, he had to leave the island as well for the same reasons. That was a decision that we made together. Um, he's been very, very supportive of my journey. I mean, he's watched me transition from literally one. You know, I've changed so much from when we first met. We're together for 7 years next month, so he's been really, really supportive. I mean, he suffered to some degree because he also lost his position out overseas, and we had to come back together. But yeah, different journeys, but just grateful for our choices and our decisions.
Mm. And so, but he's like on a similar page to you now, and
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
gets it. That's really cool because some people's relationship fell apart and all sorts of things happen these years, right?
Oh, it's absolutely insane. I'm so lucky because I'm one of 7 siblings, and none of my siblings have taken the vaccine. My
No
dad lost his
way.
job. My dad lost his job about 6 months before me because he refused to have the PCR test. And I had so much support and love from my dad.
Okay.
When I lost my job, I texted him saying I've lost my job, and he just said, "I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for sticking up for what you believe in."
Wow. That's amazing because again, that's another thing with some people, the family is not on the same page and it's been quite hard and difficult and fallouts and everything, and that's a lot of people to be all on the same page. And I actually have 7 siblings as well.
Wow, do
But
you?
only two of us chose not to get it.
Really? It's so fascinating, isn't it? But interestingly, we all came to our own conclusion independently. There wasn't like a group chat where we were all saying don't do
I
it.
love that.
We all just came to our own conclusions independently. I don't know why. Like it's strange, but yeah.
Mm. That's so cool because also it's just like a support group throughout the period. You must have been talking to each other a bit as well, like over the years,
Yeah,
right?
so I had support. I had support from my family, and then obviously me and my partner shared the same
That's
views, so I had that support as well. And you know, we've been through so much in our 7 years together, a lot of traumas on both sides, and it's just really helped us grow in strength. You know, we've been through so much, but we're so strong because of it.
I love that. That's amazing. And I know what you mean. It sometimes because it's almost like there's other stuff to deal with in the relationship, but when you're on the same page with something like this, which is also really big, it's really bonding. It's
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, me and my partner, we both have quite a lot of childhood trauma wounds, and like we've been healing each other like without knowing it. Like we have this really special relationship where we kind of like pretend that we're like children pretending to be adults, and he really brings out like my inner child in me, and I didn't kind of realize this until doing all of this work, but we have been healing each other because we've been bringing out our inner child, and it's so nice. And during my plant ceremony, I was shown that our wounds heal when we create our own family home and we start our own family together. So, yeah, so we've just bought our first house, and yeah, it's all just
wow.
really exciting.
Oh, it just sounds so amazing. I love it. After like such a crazy period, because
Yeah,
it's not like it's all
absolutely.
sunshine. Yeah. Oh,
I
but
think that's the
also,
most important.
sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, when you're in a long term relationship, you hear people say all the time, like, oh, he's changed or you've changed. And we're going to change. We're growing. We're evolving all the time. I am a completely different person I was to 7 years ago when he met me. But if you can grow together and if you can support each other as you grow and go through those changes, then as a relationship, you're going to grow together as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, that's the point. Obviously, you're going to grow, change. Even when you're not in a relationship, you change and you grow. And yeah, totally. It's amazing when two people can be in support of that for each other. And it can be really hard sometimes because, the trauma, the triggers, everything just comes up. But I guess it's just like coming back to that space, to that reminder to, we're on the same team here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mm. Can't remember what I was going to say before that. But yeah, I love that. It's so cool. It's great that you have, like, it sounds like you have that community around you already. And that's what I was going to say. And also, it's like you've really come into alignment now because, and also the things in life, like you said, it was put into place so that you can come into the realizations, which I feel like is what's happening for all of us, now during this
Yeah.
period of time. It's
Yeah.
like, wake up, Neo.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I do think since COVID-19, there's been like a mass awakening. People are starting to wake up, and you hear a lot of people talking about spirituality nowadays. But that doesn't come without its challenges. There's so much toxicity amongst spirituality. There's a lot of ego in spirituality. And also, there's people that are monetizing off of spirituality and the healing journey. There's so many people that are like desperately trying to seek this path of healing. And you've got all of these choices, all of these people saying, come to my retreat, charging thousands of pounds. So I think it's a really difficult space to navigate, actually.
It's so
And
true.
I just,
But
I really hope that, what I'm offering, I just want it to be as authentic as possible based on my own experience, my background as a nurse.
yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. And I see it as well. And I'm just like, what the funk is going on here? But obviously, people are just where they are and they're offering things from where they are. And, that's just how it is and how it goes. But I'm totally there. I'm like, I want it to be authentic, real, and yeah, really like truthful, honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so
Um,
much on social media now of people talking about their coaching business and how they've 10x
yeah,
this and 10x that. And
yes.
I don't know how true most of it is.
Yes, yeah, I know, exactly. And it's true, like you said, it is hard to navigate, but it's not just in the spiritual community, it's even in the world, like we're just speaking now and what happened and these tricksters coming saying, here, take this poison, drink this poison. You know what I mean? It's everywhere.
Yeah.
We have to be really aware.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But especially now, like this, now it's like, yeah, there are
Because
so
I
many
think
things.
things are on the turn, aren't they? I think so many people have
Yes,
lost faith in conventional medicine. So many people want to take care of themselves. So people are looking to more sort of holistic alternative practices. But the good thing about the work that I do is I don't disregard any medical approach. So I'm not telling my clients don't go to your GP, don't take that tablet. I'm telling them just take the best of all approaches. You can go for immunotherapy of cancer, but you can still go for some Reiki healing and you can still take that supplement that you've researched. It's about empowering the patient to make the best decision for themselves. And that's the biggest issue with Western medicine. We've taken the power away from people. So we've kind of made people codependent on this ideology that if they're sick, if they've got a symptom, they have to go to the doctor and the doctor's going to prescribe a tablet to suppress the symptom. Well, I believe that those symptoms are actually messages from our body. The body's trying to tell us hey, there's something going on here. I'm in a state of dis-ease. I'm in disharmony.
Yeah.
And it's trying to communicate with us. So, for example, if you're dehydrated, you might get a headache. That is a symptom because your body is dehydrated. Your body is trying to tell you, I need some water. I'm dehydrated. But what do most of us do? We go and take some paracetamol because that's the way we've been educated. So that's not to say that you shouldn't go to the doctor if you've got something wrong with you. It's just to say that within all of us, we have this incredible capacity to self heal. We all have self healing mechanisms within our own body, but we just need to
Love that.
find out how to activate them. And
Yeah.
that's where I come in. I'm trying to awaken the inner healer in people to start them on their own healing journey.
That's amazing. I love it. I think, yeah, it depends where the person's beliefs lie, because, yeah, like you said, you have to do what they're comfortable with doing. And sometimes, like, if someone is taking medication, it's not really a good idea to just be like, okay, done. But other people have a different belief and perspective and experience. And I feel like, some people will just be like, okay, screw that. And then completely go like the very alternative route. And it works for them as well, it all just depends, where
Oh,
they are.
absolutely. It's like a diet, people try different diets and everyone's different and everyone's unique
Yeah.
and it's what works for you. And that's why
Yeah.
we've got to educate ourselves. If someone's suffering with anxiety or depression, educate yourself on what that actually is, what's going on in your body, how can you help yourself? I think the problem is we want a quick fix for everything, don't we? So if we suffer with anxiety, we want to go to the doctor and for them to give us a tablet and say, this will take that symptom away. But actually, why have you got anxiety? Is there something underlying there, the root cause? What is causing your anxiety? And we look at anxiety as a mental health problem, but even something as simple as caffeine can make you anxious, stimulants. So this is where the looking at the bigger picture comes in, understanding, what are people eating? Are they sedentary? Are they moving? How are they managing their stress? Don't get me started on stress.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just think that's it. The journey in becoming conscious is so many things to think about. It's not about hiding away and running away and avoiding and dissociating and all those things. It's like, that we have the information as well, now what do we do? How do we, live with more awareness, more integrity in our lives?
Yeah.
Because I
And I think
think,
that can be one. Sorry,
so
go.
here you go.
I think that's really hard sometimes. I think when
Yeah.
you've been on a real spiritual
Yes.
journey, when you've experienced, when you've really experienced some of the things that I've kind of gone through, especially with my medicine journeys, it's hard to come back to this Western lifestyle and to integrate it and to go back to the normal kind of Monday to Friday grind.
Yes, so true. And the other thing I think as well is that I see people thinking it's overwhelming, it's too much, like, to know all the things, like even like the products that you're using and the food and the people in your life. Like, there's so much to consider when your awareness is heightened, is that people are like, oh yeah, but you've gone too far. There's this concept like, oh, you've gone too far now, you're taking it too. Whereas
Yeah.
I think that actually that's just the natural unfolding of the rise in consciousness.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I think that it can be overwhelming, but I think it's all part of the journey. As
Yes.
part of the journey, you'll learn more. Overnight, you're not going to completely change your whole skincare routine, your
Yeah, of
toothpaste.
course.
It's not gonna happen overnight. They're all things that are gonna happen, gradually over
Yes.
time.
Yeah, and also within that, there's like, sometimes other people might place judgment on you. Oh, you're hypocritical because, like, you said this and now you're doing this. It's but the truth is that it happens like you just described. So we have to just be where we are and accept where we are and where other people are.
Yeah, it's coming into that place of non-judgment, isn't it? And
Yes.
I think that's the problem with spirituality sometimes. When you do become conscious and you raise your conscious awareness and you have a deep understanding of the universe and the world, sometimes you can put yourself, up here. And
Yes.
I think we have to understand everyone's on their own journey.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest lessons for me in this healing journey has been that, everyone's on their own journey. So historically, I would jump in thinking, I can help you, I want to help you.
Yeah.
But some people have to go through these lessons to learn and to
Yeah.
grow. So, we can't jump in
So
on
true.
everyone's journey and try and save them, because they have to go through those experiences so that they can learn. That's part of their path and their journey.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I know that feeling as well. It's like, oh, yeah, I've been here. I've been like, I want to. But it doesn't always work like that. It just doesn't. Yeah. And it's funny because then you just like, okay. And then you just have to let go and just see them on their journey, and it's fine.
Yeah, I think the best thing we can do is plant the seeds for healing and just hope that they take note. But if they don't, it's, you can't waste your energy on people that don't want to heal. And not everyone, lots of people don't want to heal. There's a lot of
Yes.
secondary gains for people who have chronic diseases, whether it be benefits or whether it be they get attention from their family members. Some people generally don't want to get better, and that's their journey. So, and
Yes.
although that
Yes.
can be hard, although that can be hard for us to comprehend,
Yeah. Exactly.
we shouldn't waste our energy on people that aren't ready or don't
Yeah.
want to heal. It has to
Yeah.
come from the person.
I like that the way you said it. It's like wasting your energy, because now that puts you in an empowering place. Like, you know, you know what I mean. But it's so true. And then when you think of the journey of souls, like there's so many different experiences that everyone is having here. Not everything is going to happen at the same time in one lifetime. So yeah,
Yeah.
exactly what you said. Yeah. I wanted to hear about the term spiritual awakening, because I feel like when mine happened and when I heard that phrase, like I remember finding it on Google and just being like, this is what's happening. Like I was just like, oh
hmm
my word, this is what's going on. How did you come across that term?
that is a really good question. I think it all came about. I think I realised that I was going. Have you heard of Saturn return? It's a term
Yeah.
used in
Yeah.
astrology. Yes, it happens every 27 to 30 years, and it's where Saturn does a full cycle of all the planets. And it comes back to the exact location where you were born. And Saturn is this planet of like teachings, very authoritarian. If you've been living your life in alignment during this period, you will be rewarded. So you may marry, you may have a family, you may get a new job. If you haven't been living your life in alignment, during the 27 to 30 years, you are going to be thrown some challenges in your way that are going to set you up for your 30s. It's preparing you for adulthood. So, at one point, I told you I felt like the universe was punishing me, and I just couldn't understand why are these things repeatedly happening to me. And then I learned about the Saturn return, and I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And then because I'd started getting into kind of my own spiritual practices, I started reading about spiritual awakening. And then I read about the dark night of the soul. And it's just so fitting for everything that I went through. So there's no doubt now, looking back on it, that that was for me a huge awakening. And as
Yeah.
part of a spiritual awakening, they speak about this rebirth and coming into alignment to who you truly are. And
Yeah.
that for me has been so powerful, because I'm such a different person now to who I was at
Yeah.
28 years old. It is literally like I have like a butterfly that's come out of the cocoon and it's like spread their
Yeah.
wings. And it's just been so empowering. And honestly, I have so much love for life, like so much love for this existence, so much gratitude for my experiences and what I've been through. Just so grateful. And I wouldn't be where I am without that spiritual awakening, without those spiritual practices. But again, it stemmed from trauma, so it's different for everybody why they go for a spiritual awakening. And I think it sounds quite intense, doesn't it, the word spiritual awakening? And lots of people ask me, how can I go through a spiritual awakening? Obviously, I didn't choose to go through one. It was kind of like pushed on me because of this trauma. But if anybody is interested in exploring their spiritual side, I would just say start with meditation.
Yeah, always.
Always.
Always. Yeah, totally. Yeah, so it was through the Saturn return thing. Okay, that makes sense. It kind of came to your view. What? Yeah, another thing I was going to ask you is, have you seen anything else, like, or at the time, did you see anything else that was happening to people because of taking the injection? And just from your own experience and knowledge, what, like now, are you working with any people, and like, do you know of any other ways of helping people who have taken it now, like, for example?
That's a really good question. So yeah, since sort of 2021, I have noticed a change in the presentation of symptoms, especially acute symptoms of patients in the hospital, and this kind of correlates with what's being shown in the evidence as well. So we've got a massive increase in cardiac patients, so people with heart failure, heart attack in young people. And then we've also got a real increase in blood clots, which we didn't really see before. So deep vein thrombosis, multiple blood clots on the lungs, just kind of things that we would see before, but they weren't as common. They've just become a lot more common. In terms of the second question that you asked me, I'm at the moment trialing a heavy detox, a heavy metal detox, which I have heard that a lot of people are using for that particular reason, to detox from spike protein. But I don't know enough about it to be able to say for sure. I'm actually on day one, so I'm going to do a little review on my Instagram of how that goes. But I have heard that lots of people are going for these sort of heavy metal detoxes as a way to try and detox the body.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. So, are you still at the moment currently working in a hospital?
Yeah, so I work on the hospital bank. So I still work in an NHS hospital, which means I pick when I go into work. I've got a 0 hours contract. I work at the weekends. So I do mindfulness Monday to Friday. I only launched mindfulness in September. So, we're still growing. And I set myself a goal to leave the NHS by September 24. So I've got 3 months to get some more clients, to try and get a bit busier so that I can do this more, because this is really what I want to do.
I got it. So that's how you're also, seeing what's happening now as it's unraveling. But yeah, it is. You're right. It is correlating with the studies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I put out a video in February talking about the excess deaths and the
Okay.
discussion that happened at Parliament. And the video actually went viral.
Oh,
Andrew
wow.
Bridgen, the MP who spoke at Parliament, posted it on his Twitter page, and it got 500,000 views. I had no idea. So I woke up the next day, because I'm not on Twitter. I woke up the next day and had all these people contacting me, asking me to go on their radio show, on their podcast, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come on. I really want to talk about mindfulness. But they were calling me because they'd seen this video. So it got a lot of attention, and yeah, I actually got reported to the Nursing Midwifery Council, which is the council that I'm registered with for nursing. And they've been investigating me for the last couple of months regarding this video. And I was simply just talking about what was discussed at Parliament. I'm very particular about the way I word things with content, because you have to be so careful, as you know. So yeah, it's difficult. I mean, you can just get completely removed. So the investigation's complete now, and there's no further issues. I can continue practicing as a nurse. That's absolutely fine. But it just goes to show,
The levels.
yeah, the levels.
What? So I think I remember this. I think I remember seeing this video of him, Andrew Bridgen. Can't quite remember. And that was this year that happened, February.
Yeah, it was at the beginning of the year, so it was a really, really important conversation. It happened at Parliament. They were talking about the excess deaths, and they had different doctors, different scientists presenting actual data, and they were simply saying there seems to be a big link between the rollout
Yes.
and this huge surge of cardiac deaths. Massive increase, especially amongst sort of the 50 to 65-year-old age group. And all they were saying was, if this is the case, surely we should just
We
stop and
should.
have a look,
Yeah. I
halt the
remember.
booster vaccines. They're still giving the booster vaccines now, so they haven't halted anything. And there is a COVID inquiry that is going to take place, but it's taking its sweet time.
Yeah. So another question, because I feel like this is something that we've all kind of had to navigate the terrain. But have you had any like conversations with people who really just disagree with what you're saying and think that you're spreading misinformation? Like, and how do you handle those
Um,
conversations?
I would say at the beginning in 2021 and 22, when it first happened, those conversations were rife. We were getting
That's
really ostracized. I
true.
wasn't even allowed to have a conversation with someone about my view because it was completely wrong. Everyone else was completely right. So there was no debate about it. They were right and we were completely wrong. We were totally just. That was back in 22, but I would say that things have changed now. So I came off of
Mm,
social media for 2 years because of all of that. Mental health was really bad. And I came back on to launch my business September last year. And coming back onto social media, I see that there's been a big shift in people's
shift. Yeah.
awareness, and people are
Interesting.
starting to now say that they knew all along, and people's perceptions have really changed. But yeah, I put some of those videos out and I got some really not very nice messages from people saying that I was disgusting, I make them sick, I'm spreading misinformation, abusing my power as a nurse. And the Nursing Midwifery Council actually said that all nurses are entitled to an opinion, even though I hadn't shared my opinion in that video.
I know, it's so interesting, isn't it? It's just so interesting. Like, I find it fascinating just that people say like, um, I don't know, like, how dare you share your opinion? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, but don't you think it's like that on whenever you read comments on like Instagram,
right.
someone will say something and someone gets offended, and it's like the emotional intelligence of the population just seems to have plummeted. Like no one can have a debate
Yeah.
anymore. No one can have an open conversation. And
Yes.
actually, emotional intelligence is about understanding different perspectives.
That's what I
I
mean.
don't
Exactly.
I
That's
don't know
exactly
how
the
we've
point.
got here.
Exactly. It's like, why? I find it so interesting, especially online and social media. Like, it could be anything. You could say something, and the people who comment are like disagreeing it. They kind of attack what you're saying. But I'm just like, if you don't agree with why do you find it necessary, like you were saying earlier as well, to waste your energy commenting on that?
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
and also
yeah,
just knowing that it's okay. We can have different opinions and that's fine, you know.
yeah.
But then
But also, but
it's
also
yeah,
once you have this level of understanding, you'll realize that if people are becoming triggered by what you're saying, it's because it's an evoking an emotion in them. It's
yes,
reflecting something. It's reflecting
yes,
something within them. So, what I have found, anyone that has personally attacked me from any of the things that I have said, they are people who have taken the vaccine, who are living in fear that what they've done is
fear now,
wrong, and
yeah,
they're now projecting onto other people. And I think actually
yes,
I think that's what it is. I think there's a real
yeah,
projection amongst people.
that's true.
It's an unhappiness within them.
Yeah, and I also remember, like during the time, like you said, when the conversations were more like ripe, um, I kept seeing people say, when you're actually comfortable within your decision and your perspective and your beliefs, you don't feel attacked when people say something that is the opposite or different to what you think. So, you don't
Yeah.
feel the need to have that emotional response.
No, I completely agree with that. And there's been comments on my post before, and I get to the point where I'm like, I'm not going to waste my energy trying
Yeah.
to convince that. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to waste my energy because they've already
Yeah.
made up their mind.
Yes, exactly. And this is the point because I feel like you know what happens is like one person will say something, the other person says something else, and then it's like you just kind of repeating yourself. You know what I mean? Saying the
Yeah,
same thing, but um, at the same time, there's a funny dynamic happening because normally what one person is saying is like in the mainstream. For me, anything that's in the mainstream, I feel like has to be questioned. So it's like
yeah,
when the other opinion is offered, it's just like debunked with what's in the mainstream. It just that to me is just like, come on, like it doesn't make sense.
yeah,
Actually, it's like, are you listening to the other perspective? Everybody knows what the mainstream perspective is. Like we all know it's in front of our faces all the time, you know?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But this is how sad it's become. People go to the efforts of looking at the other person's profile, looking
Yeah.
at their picture or their bio, and then making a personal attack on them in the
Tech.
comments about the way they look. And I'm like, when did our society become so, like, we're so consumed by these phones that we're now having these
Yeah,
arguments with
wow.
people?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? I think the weirdest one for
So
me, this
true.
is kind of digressing a little bit, but you know, these animal pages? People set up these like
Yeah.
dog pages and they start having
Yeah.
comments pretending to be their dog to
Oh
another
wow.
person who's pretending to be their dog. And I'm like, when do we, like, it's just gone totally mad.
Yeah, the identity game, identity, like all the labels, everything.
Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? We're so desperate. We lack so much identity. We're so desperate to give ourselves something that we
Yes.
are putting labels on each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also read this other thing the other day, and it was saying, you know, I think it just what you said is just so spot on. It's like sometimes I think people can go in there and they can come out relatively unscathed. You know, other people might get drawn. You know, do you know what I mean? Like sometimes, even just in conversation, not just online, like sometimes you might feel like, okay, actually, I feel like I can handle this conversation now, and I'm gonna be fine afterwards. But sometimes it can really affect people's like emotional, mental stability.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, this thing I was reading the other day was saying, yeah, if someone is emotionally reactive in the
Yeah,
conversation, it's not really worth having the conversation.
no, no. And people probably aren't aware that they're becoming reactive. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
where this self-awareness comes in.
Mm, yeah, yeah, totally. And it's true because sometimes I've even pointed out to people, like I remember a long time ago with my family, sometimes I feel like they like to talk, although I feel like it's changed, to be honest, but they like to shout. Like they're speaking so loudly, and I'm like, guys, what's going on? I remember just being like, why are you so angry? And then you know that typical, I'm not angry, and I'm like, but
Yeah.
yeah, they didn't
But
realize.
but people have been through so much, and people are holding so much repressed emotions. And you will find this.
Yes,
I found this with hugging people. I love to give really good hugs, and
yeah, I
when I
love
hug
hugs.
someone, I hold on to them. I hold on to them, and I hold them that bit longer that they don't want. You know, they try and pull
Yeah,
away.
yeah, 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 I know. I do that sometimes.
Because some people are holding so much emotion that if you hold them for that bit too long, they will cry because they're so
Yeah,
emotionally vulnerable, because they're
yeah,
carrying so
I
much
know.
repressed emotions.
So true. I know exactly what you mean.
Give hugs, people. It
Yeah,
releases oxytocin, the love chemical. It's just
yeah,
such a nice thing to be able to do. But yeah, people are
yeah,
holding so much trauma and so much pain, and you know, like you said about kind of the mainstream, I've kind of found that after being a nurse for 8 years, I'm having to relearn everything that I understand about health and what it means to be healthy and what this idea of healing is. We don't understand the idea of healing in Western medicine. If you ask any nurse, what does healing mean? They'll ask, you know, are we talking about wound care here? We've got no idea what healing a person actually means,
mm,
this idea to become whole. So I've had to do a lot of retraining, restudying to really
yeah,
understand what it means to be a holistic practitioner. And I think that this is the
yeah,
future of medicine. I think the holistic
yeah,
way is the way forward.
100%. I mean, obviously, you were on the front line with this specific you know, Western medicine category, but it's just part of the awakening as well. Like individually, we experience it. We have to unlearn the programming that we're taught that says that things are only this way and this is the only way. Like, there's more, you know.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Even with things like diet and, this idea that we need sugar for energy, actually, sugar's causing inflammation in the body, and we're unconsciously consuming sugar like crazy. I mean, I'm in a real privileged position to have my foot in the world of conventional medicine and my foot in the world of holistic healing, because I can see firsthand what is the health state of our country. And
Mm.
it's insane. I have never seen so much chronic disease in my life. And these are called
Mm.
modern lifestyle diseases. They're linked to our lifestyle. Type 2
Yeah,
diabetes,
of course
high
they are,
blood
right?
pressure, all completely reversible just with diet.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, completely. The thing about sugar that I also find is that people mainly, I feel like it's the processed sugars. Fruits is like a different thing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like when people say sugar, a lot of people just think it means all of it in one pot, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot that's still like for us to be discovered and what's really going on, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it just is returning to our roots, looking at how our ancestors
Mm.
lived. We've become so
Yeah.
far removed. But I really
Yes.
just want to
Yes. Yes.
push
Yes.
this idea, or this idea that we need to reconnect with our spirit, with our soul, with our higher self. And our higher selves have nothing but complete compassion and unconditional love for us.
Mm.
And we're so disconnected. So it's just about removing all of the noise in our life. Even if people can come off of social media for like a month, that is such a freeing experience to not be a slave to your phone.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. What I've also wanted to ask you, have you had other people who have like come to you as well and said, "Oh yeah, I think, who might have said something to you in the past who now like realize what's going on?" Um,
Um, I've had quite a lot of healthcare workers message me saying that they're kind of going through like a bit of an awakening, and they're starting to realise that what happened like isn't in alignment with what they've been taught. Interestingly, though, I spoke to a student nurse the other day who told me that they're actually teaching COVID-19 as an example in universities as to where they failed in medical ethics. So that was quite interesting. But yeah, I do get lots of people going through awakenings reach out to me on social media, maybe just for some guidance or because they're feeling a bit lost with it all.
yeah, yeah. It can be like that for sure. Mm. So, anything else to share here? Yeah, thank you for speaking about your journey. I think it's amazing, specifically because of what you do, because it's a big thing to shift the conditioning when it comes to Western medicine for all of us. I really think it is
Yeah,
for all of us. Because yeah, it's something like you mentioned before where we just think this is it, and then you put your trust there, and like. But I love your message of self healing because I completely agree with you. And again, it's also my personal experience as well. Reconnecting to myself and learning the ways of self healing.
yeah, it's huge, and
Um,
it's so empowering for anyone to be able to have that level of connection with their own body for the self healing. But one of the biggest things I can say as a nurse is I see a lot of people in their 40s, 50s, 60s who haven't lived their life in alignment with their higher self, with their true self, and they get diagnosed with a terminal diagnosis, and all of a sudden, for the first time, they're faced with this fear that their mortality, they could lose their life and they haven't lived the life that they've wanted. So I think it's so important for us to ask ourselves these questions. Am I living my life authentically? How do I want to be remembered when I'm gone? So that
mhm.
you don't get to a point in your life where it's kind of too late, and then you're regretful.
Yeah. Yes. It makes sense. I mean, I think the other thing about those questions is that, again, we've been taught as if like, oh, we don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, like the big questions, like, who are we? Who are we? And so,
Yeah.
like, it's stopped before it's even started, But it's like, know that you can empower yourself to find the answer to those questions. The answers are here,
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can get to know more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. The journey of self-discovery, it's the best gift you can give yourself.
Yes, it certainly is. Yeah, but challenging one too. But,
yeah, doesn't come without its challenges.
so I like to ask people this question to end. Just, what does freedom mean to you?
Wow, that's a big question. What does freedom mean to me? I think that I have found freedom in the journey of self-discovery. I think I found freedom in finding my purpose. And I think the biggest thing for me has been discovering that happiness comes from within. It doesn't come from an external source. So we've been so conditioned to believe that we're going to find happiness through bigger houses, a nice car, all these materialistic things. But happiness comes from within. So if you want to find freedom, find happiness, do it through meditation.
Yeah, so I like how you brought happiness in there, because it's like very connected, very interlinked.
Yeah, I think it's about understanding your own mind, isn't it? It's a battle constantly against our own mind. If we can learn to control our minds, then we have freedom, right? If we can control our thoughts. And I think that is the biggest challenge for a lot of people, is they can't control their thoughts, they don't understand their thoughts, and that's why we are seeing anxiety and depression. And again, meditation will help you with that.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. And again, they don't know. We haven't been given the tools. We might not know how.
No,
We might not even know that it's possible. Yeah, yeah. But it is.
it is possible. Jess, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. I'll put all your links as well there so people can find you. But yeah,
Yes,
amazing
please do.
conversation, and keep doing what you're doing. Keep spreading the message of self-healing.
I will. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And thank you for anyone who listens and tunes in. Hope they've learned something from this conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode and to this podcast. We hope that you can gain many insights through the art of listening. If you haven't already, we would love it if you can follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if that feels right for you. We've also just launched our first online course, Awakening 101, a ninja's guide to navigating a spiritual awakening, which is led by me and is offered via donation. So if you feel called to that, then please dive in. It's available via our website. Thank you.